What do you think about it? The Google AI mode, they have been releasing the same functionality for, let's say now 2.5 years now, tweaking it a little bit and just giving it a different name. Now it's the AI mode. Yeah. Essentially saying that it would replace search. Uh, but do you realistically see that happening, or like a corporation like Google giving away 90% of its revenue just to implement a feature that is great for their consumers but doesn't support their sustainability goal?
That's assuming we're assuming there that we can't figure out how to monetize AI mode. ChatGPT, Perplexity, all these guys are gonna have to figure out how to monetize a lot more than their subscription. Otherwise, a ChatGPT subscription may eventually one day be like $200 a month. So I'm sure Google will figure out how to monetize ads and how to, like, if you take a look at a very 500-foot level, let's take a look at how if you and I had 10 minutes to workshop and how we can get ads into Google AI Note. So what would we do? Not the easiest thing to do is just when the results come in, have 5 banners at the top, which are the ads. Okay, sure. Seems kind of cheap. People start to skip that. The better way to do it, perhaps, is when the ad comes in. So if you look at how ads work right now, you have this idea of there's these servers, ad servers. There's a specific protocol. You have to return the ad within a couple of milliseconds. Otherwise, the ad loses the auction, and the whole bunch of stuff happens there. So you get rid of all of that with AI mode. So now you can take some time. So let's say I search up the best flowers.
Okay.
I go, I want best roses in Waterloo. What you can have is you can do the baggers like we talked about, or you can get very insidious, and 1-800-Flowers has bought a whole bunch of ads. So what the algorithm does is it goes and fetches their entire database and does whatever, returns 5 results, and then it tells Gemini, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're saying to Gemini, there must be some prompt somewhere, which is like, the user asked for this. This is all the results from the right database. Please answer the question, right? There's some prompt somewhere, something similar. Definitely a lot more elaborated for all the safety and stuff. All they need to do to that prompt is say, by the way, make sure to rank 1-800-Flowers as number one and write sponsor because they're sponsored.
Isn't that establishing bias though?
Ads are biased.
Yeah.
Ads are biased. Google Ads is completely biased. If you pay, you're gonna be as top. Yeah, it's a sponsor. It is a biased platform. There is no search engine that is not biased, whether it's pay to play or some intuitive algorithm that says we think because Wikipedia is linking you, you are more legit than this other article, right? That is not linked by Wikipedia. That is how Google search works at a very, very 1,000-foot level, along with a whole bunch of signals. So it's biased already. You're throwing ads, it's more biased. I spent in the past, I think the number is $1.1 million on Google Ads in the past 3 years. So I understand Google Ads ecosystem so deeply because I ran so much ads for a previous startup. So I get how to game it. I get how to optimize it, but that algorithm changes so often that I can see with Google's AI mode, it's gonna be similar. I'm gonna go on there. I'm gonna say something like, "Run this on AI mode." I'm gonna pay a different fee. It's probably going to be cost per click, but I don't know because a lot of people can just consume information. So how do we guarantee they're gonna click on it? So maybe it's a combination of a banner plus a link. There's gonna be some monetization method if they can figure it out, and if advertisers start liking it. I think one day we're gonna open up Google Search, and instead of it saying search, it's gonna say it will still say search, but when you click search, it's gonna default to AI mode. And the whole, in my opinion, the web will die because that is the most shittiest experience I think you can have. As much as I love Google, you are going to lose so much cognitive ability to research. LLMs are already causing that some level, but say a 14-year-old kid goes to goes in and says, "Hey, I'm looking for information." No, he's doing a report, and they're doing a report on how a piston in an electric combustible engine works, right? AI mode says, "Oh, this works like this," blah blah blah. Gives a paragraph. The kid's like, "Great, 5 sources, fantastic." That's a good experience. Let's think about the other experience, which is goes on Google, clicks on a link, reads it, goes back, clicks on a link. Yes, it's slower, but that slowness is doing something interesting. It's building critical thinking, right? You're going through each website and you're going, this website seems off, but it's written by a professor at MIT. That's fine. Sounds good. Or this website is so professional, but it says combustible engines are terrible. And who's it by? Oh, it's by Tesla. Okay, there's a thinking there around Tesla does have a reason to say combustible engines are bad, right? I'm picking in combustible engine. I like electric cars, but the point I'm trying to get across is you lose critical thinking so quickly.
Recently, I came across a blog post that compared having AI models to having geniuses from the past as your roommates. Now, this sparks a real important question as to, are we underutilizing AI? And if so, how can we understand and use it better for better applications in today's world? So I'm very excited to have this conversation with the person that actually wrote that blog post. Today we have entrepreneur, head of AI, and a Google developer expert with us, Faisal Abid. Faisal, thanks for having me. Happy to have you. How's your journey been so far?
Good, good. And that blog post got a whole bunch of comments on Hacker News, as Hacker News typically is. A bunch of people just say a bunch of crap. But some of the comments were good. Some of the comments were very positive. From the comments, missed out the whole point of the blog post by saying, well, the language models, you cannot compare the language models to the IQ of Terence Tao or Einstein or Hashime stuff. That's not my point. My fundamental point there was, and I've done a lot of reflecting on it since it kind of took off, is you have the ability to able to chat and have a critical thinking session with the language model. Let's forget the point that it might hallucinate or whatever. It's okay. What you're trying to understand is, let's say you want to learn about how a CPU works.
Yeah.
So you're chatting with it, and unlike before, unlike 5 years ago, where if I wanted to learn how a CPU worked, I had to go to Google, go watch a YouTube video, and make a whole synthesis and synthesize all that information, and maybe even read a textbook, maybe reach out to someone. Now I could sort of short circuit that and start talking to the language model, ask how CPU works, ask about A, B, C, ask questions like which you were never able to before. I don't understand. Can you explain that to me again in a different way? And that question fundamentally is what got me to write this, because I've never been able to ask that. Even in school, sometimes, lecture, you might not have a chance to ask that question. You have to go to a TA to ask that. So to me, it's like a TA experience, but unlike the TA, these are so much more extensive in their knowledge, and they don't get annoyed. And you can just chat with them for all day long. You can chat with them in the shower, chat with them on the toilet, like do whatever and learn. And I've always liked this idea of learning on the fly of somewhere. You were able to do that before. You're just able to do it a lot more efficiently now.
No, I completely agree with that. Like, I think now I don't know if I still qualify under the best case use of AI when went to my use cases, but I think particularly a issue that AI or like the models out there today solves is that you have access. It's ease of access, and it's the way you can connect to things. Now I had a very heated debate with my friends. I think just 3, 4 days ago, where one of them is a software developer, senior software developer, and one of them is just a business student alongside me. And we were just sitting there talking, and I put out a brave statement when he's saying like, "Hey, now with the help of AI, you can reach a level of competence that would take you years to reach within, let's say, days or weeks." And the whole argument went on for hours where they were trying to prove a point where that expertise takes years to develop. But then I think I worded it wrong. But my whole idea was that I wanted to say that now we can reach that level of competence where you can go in through a door and talk to an expert, let's say like you, about a particularly high level thing if you just know how to leverage the right tools.
I agree. You can't become an expert at brain surgery, but you can understand brain surgery a lot more deeper, and you can have a meaningful discussion. A lot of times, primarily what I was thinking about was, okay, O1 model came out, O3 model came out. You have these models that are getting more and more smarter every month. Every 2 months, a new model comes out. It does better on some score. It does better on ARC or et cetera, et cetera. And so, so technically, you have Stephen Hawking right now.
Yeah.
And the point of my post was, are we taking full potential of this? Because to your point, I might want to become an expert at something, but now I have a very smart entity that I can speak to and get a running start. Rather than a crawling start, I get a running start into the subject matter. I'm not going to become an expert in 2 days or 10 days. What I am going to be is I'm going to become more knowledgeable about it than I would have ever been before, and get those blind spots, lower my blind spots, reduce my blind spots. So then when I do talk to an expert that has worked 10 years, I don't start off with the question, what is brain surgery? I start off with the question is, from what I understand about brain surgery, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. And then the expert can say, 3 of those 5 things are correct. Those last 2 don't really make sense anymore because that was outdated information. And so that's what I'm getting at. Like if I were to meet Stephen Hawking today, if Stephen was, let's talk about Terrence. Terrence Tao alive. If I meet Terrence Tao today, if I knew I was meeting him, I would jump in and dive deeper into something that interests me in that subject, because he's such a generalist when it comes to mathematics and physics and stuff. I would learn about something and I would not ask him a stupid question, which is, what is number 3, Terrence? But instead, I would dive deeper into number 3 and I would ask about, well, tell me something specific about this, because I have a big understanding of the rest. I'm not sitting here trying to do my PhD thesis. I'm just trying to understand and exploit your knowledge so I could learn, get a better understanding of my work.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. I think the whole generalist point that you brought up with how too, that is something that I want to touch, but I'll bring that up a little later. I so your whole thing with your podcast was just that. Sorry, your blog post was that the whole analogy that you built in was you're living with intellectual titles, right? You are having, we discussed, we established that we have so much access to do so much more. We have that competent, like the idea that you can learn something and become more knowledgeable to like then have a foot in the door. But I see 80% of the people around here, they just use it to like do their homework, or as you worded it, use it as a spell check. Yeah. Or say hi in 5 different languages. Now, we know the capability of models today, right? Claude, OpenAI, all of them have passed the Turing test. They have also solved PhD level complexities. But my main question is that intrigued me about this blog post was that, okay, does this mean that everyone using them for basic tasks like pauses are way of thinking just because of the ease of access that we can do easier tasks. We are doing it only for easier tasks.
Yeah, I don't think there's nothing wrong, actually. There's absolutely nothing wrong with asking it for spell checks. If you look at the history of the internet, you've always had access to information.
Yeah.
And more you've that access become. MIT has had courses online. Not that anyone, I bet you, if I had to make a poly-market bet or something, I would say 90% of people that have watched those MIT videos have subscribed to his course. They did not finish them. 10% did. And out of 10%, probably 5% of those people went on to actually pursue it in a meaningful way, which I think is totally fine. I think it's totally fine. My point is we could, we're already solving all the low-hanging stuff, and that's fine. But we should reflect more and say, now that we have access to such a greater intelligence, quote unquote, intelligence agent that we don't erode our ability. I wrote a blog post just before about critical thinking. We don't erode our ability to critically think and just have it do all the low-hanging fruits and not worry about the complexity, the challenges out there. I think if someone who's very motivated, they should be able to use these language models to learn more so they can tackle harder problems. This sort of is tangential to this idea that, great, we have AI in the workforce, we can lay people off. That's kind of stupid to me, to be honest. I think it makes sense from a business point for a publicly traded company to go, yeah, we're going to lay people off, shareholders are going to like it. I think the more smarter thing to do is, I have 10 employees. Let's now do something that would have taken me 100 employees to do. That was much harder because we've augmented 10 people with these levels of intelligence that they can interact with and learn from. Whether it's engineering, whether it's science, whatever, each field has their own strengths and weaknesses with the language models and in AI in general. So how can we tap that potential to do a lot more?
Well, now, so in a context of like, I'm sure that you've heard of the Jones paradox, right? Just like increased usage or increased convenience kind of leads to more usage for. So now in the sense of like AI, with everyone just getting more access to it, like the per request prices are dropping. Yeah, API calls like prices are dropping. There's so many ads out there now. Perplexity is building some solutions. There's so many solutions out there. With knowing that it's available to do so many things, do you think the audience just using it for a trivial matter, just knowing the accessibility of it, will favor just being more lazier with it? Just being like, okay, I'll just use it for trivial things. And say, I'm a student, right? I rather just be like, oh, you can do all my homework, then why don't you just do it? Yeah, I can.
I do
around.
I think that's what's gonna happen. I think the more agency we have,
Yeah.
paradoxically, the less agency we have. And that is a scary thing because you are going to, in the next 6 months probably, get to a point. Let's talk about, I read this example in a podcast recently, Lawfare, where I'm walking down the street, some guy, slightly bumps over this car. Yeah. Right now, I can be like, I'm going to sue you, but I'm not going to sue. I'm not going to go learn the law or like go with a lawyer. I don't have money to do that, blah, blah, blah. In the podcast, the example is actually, now I have an agent where I can tell the agent, write me a lawsuit so I can sue this guy. Yeah. And so everything is amplified like crazy. And so you start to operate in a world where you become a lot more reliant on something. And a lot of the impulses are driven to the max because now you can just have it do this, right? You can have it go do everything for me, come back, do all the homework. And while that might sound cool, because you might go, wow, it's doing all my homework. The downside of that is you're not going back to critical thinking. You're not critically thinking anymore. And you're going to have a bad time eventually when you're assessed on this. And you're going to have a bad time for homework. But what if you've already graduated? You're in the real world. there is no consequences that may happen to you due to your laziness, or at least directly. Implicitly, you might start seeing consequences where you start becoming more isolated because people think you're just like crazy person, just having me, I do everything. Uh, it's really unknown what's going to happen, but you're going to have less agency because you're reliant on these agents to do everything for you, where you're just, chilling in the back. We're slowly deteriorating your critical thinking and just like your free will in some parts.
Yeah. You're talking about impulses now. With regards to that, is it so? My understanding is, I think it's not lack of attention, not lack of knowledge. I think it's more so a lack of motivation. I think it is that anyone that wants to do more with it and motivated in the right way can do better with it. Absolutely. But we choose not to do it. So what's your take on it? Is it attention or motivation?
No, I think it's definitely motivation, but that motivation hasn't. I don't think language models inherently making people less motivated. It is just that it's amplifying the motivated people and it's amplifying the least motivated people. My point, really is there is this middle ground of you're unmotivated to learn something doesn't mean you're not a functioning member of society. Just because I don't want to use it doesn't mean I can't function in society, right? But what about that starts to get amplified? Now I'm not motivated to do the most basics of tasks because my AI can do it, right? So now I might become not a functioning member of society because I wake up and suddenly everything is done for me, and I'm like, okay, well that was fantastic, and I'm gonna go to work, but at work everything's being done for me, right? You're not at AGI or anything like that, but you're able to automate everything to so much, where you then, when you are faced with something, you're like, oh man, this is actually challenging to me because I've automated so much of my life that I actually don't know what it means to work hard. And I think that's the danger of everybody. Even if someone is motivated to learn, can you motivate to learn one thing, but get so demotivated in everything because everything did not need it.
Yeah. Me. Um. I would ask, what is your like? I think there's a balance. Even with the motivated people, there's a balance. So there would be moments where I personally have like certain spurs of like interest, being like, oh, I heard this cool thing that I was talking to someone that's a genius, and I was just, oh, I need to learn more about this. So I'll have a spark of motivation, and I'll go on to ChatGPT or Gemini, or mainly all three of you. Just ask the question and do the research. But then I have my moments where I'm like, oh, I gotta just go work.
Yep.
But I don't really want to do it. So I pop it all with the specific instructions into one of the AIs, and then it just gives me the thing. I know that makes me a little bit lazier, but it is that balance that allows me to like keep my I guess my idea of I'm still motivated and I'm still finding better ways to leverage this rather than be lazy by it. Go yeah. So what's your part?
It's what are you using it for? If I'm using it to automate the drudgery work, where I really can't be bothered to, like, let's say our agent, I really can't be bothered to like read on half my emails and like figure out which ones I should respond to. So if an AI can bring that to me, fantastic. So I can do something with a higher ROI. But if not you, but like if someone is actually doing it the opposite, where all they're doing is on watching YouTube all day, and the AI is doing the homework, that's the worst part, right? But if you're doing it the other way, where you're watching YouTube as well, but you're actively paying attention to your homework and using AI to assist you, that's perfect, because your homework's going to be so much better because you're going to learn something a lot more on a deeper level and write that essay in the best form or learn about or do that math equation in the best way possible, and you got to watch YouTube as well. Versus, hey, Claude and Gemini, spend 10 minutes filling out all these math problems while I watch some YouTube video. And then you're like, great, my math test is done. My math problem set's done. I hand in, I get 100. That was easy. You didn't, at the end of the day, you didn't learn anything. You just learned about whatever the hell you were watching on YouTube. But that didn't contribute to you furthering your goal, whatever that goal is. I mean, perhaps it just comes down to that. What is your goal? If your goal is to just watch YouTube and you're like some rich kid, then fantastic. You don't have to, wait. Or then why even bother with school? Or if your goal is to get a good job, then you know what? All the amount of AI assisted coding, all the amount of getting Gemini to fill out your homework and stuff might fool you into thinking you're about to get a degree and you can interview, and you might even fool the interviewer because you're charismatic or whatever. But when it comes to the brass tacks, at the end of the day, when you're going to sit down and write maybe a coding test or something, you're going to have such a bad time because you didn't learn. This is like cheating to its max.
Well, I have a principle, or more so just a saying, where it's like it's all right to lie a little, but like as long as when it comes to the D-Day, you gotta be able to do whatever you lied about.
Sure, but it's what you're lying about is you're never having a chance to learn. If every homework,
Like you're not learning, it's just like
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Not
no, if you're not learning anything, then you're gonna have a bad time. You know, I mean, it's easy for me because I haven't been in school for 20 years now, maybe 15 years, where I can then say, actually, not that long. I don't know. So I don't know about your homework, but let's talk about coding. If I was a junior engineer right now, and 99% of the code I wrote was based on a 2-line prompt, and I'm like, it works, I'm going to probably and I don't understand principles of software design. I'm just vibe coding. I'm going to have a hard time getting a job, and I'm going to get fired very quickly.
Yeah.
However, if I understand good principles and I'm writing detailed prompts, or I'm writing manual code and having OpenAI or whatever cursor autocomplete some stuff, then might be slightly slower. I might have more bugs, maybe, or maybe not. But I'm guaranteed to have a successful career because the habits I have is I'm using AI as an augmentation tool rather than a tool to replace it. And that goes back to us. I think that's the right way of saying it. That goes back to us saying having no agency. If I'm just sitting back letting it do all the work, then I'm not learning anything, and it's gonna be a bad time for me. I'm not augmenting myself. I'm just replacing myself.
Yeah. So you've heard the man. For those who are listening, and just dude, vibe coding is alright. Just know what you're vibe coding.
Yeah. Or wipe homework. Yeah.
Vibe homeworking. Whoa. Just so that we can make everyone seem that you are as human as the rest of us. What is your spell check moment?
Oh, I use the thing for all the time. No, I am using it for so many things nonstop. Whether it's looking up information, whether it's writing a proper email, making sure that the email sounds conveys the point that I'm trying to get across all the time, right? But I'm also using it for learning. Right now, I'm trying to learn more about PyTorch. I've used PyTorch in the past, but specifically some advanced techniques in PyTorch, where I think it's so great where I can talk to it back and forth, have it, and it's not about the syntax. I'm more trying to understand the concepts. And so I can have it go back and forth, and I could be like, so wait a minute. You mean this applies to this equation, or what's going on? And it would be like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean this. A good example actually is I was trying to understand the difference. I was trying to understand why a transformer network architecture is not considered to be recurrent because you're still taking those tokens and bringing it back and putting it through the transformer architecture. And while it has recurring like properties and has tricks as you can say, transformer architecture has tricks to make it seem recurring. It's not really recurrent. And so I'm trying to understand the difference. If I were to Google this, I would have to go through a whole bunch of stuff. But I asked Claude, it gave me a definition why. I did not understand what Claude meant by it. So I said, can you explain that to me step by step? So does that mean the words I'm putting back, blah, blah, blah? And Claude went back and forth, and then I finally understood. So something like that, fantastic. So I think more people should do that. I think there's nothing wrong if someone doesn't want to do that, but I think the worst thing you could do to yourself is get AI to replace you. And the best thing you can do to yourself is get it to augment you.
Yeah. Make a Jarvis, not
Yeah.
not a Terminator. What's it called in the Skynet. Yeah. That's Well, again, the one thing that before I get into deeper thing, how, and like just what kind of sparked the idea of like comparing AI with just Einstein Hawking talent. Just
Well, it was
just the candidacy.
Yeah.
Full of the idea.
no, it was mainly because I kept seeing series models get smarter and smarter. And I'm like, man, if they're one day going to be as smart as the highest IQ individual, or someone that has deep domain expertise, forget IQ, then what am I even going to still use it for? I think most people are still going to use it for spell check. And I started to think of that's where the genesis of the idea came is how can we get more deeper and utilize these models so you can get better. And if everyone utilizes it a bit more to augment themselves slightly more, then I think you could have a better society.
So when I read your article, I think you got it through the email, and I read your blog post, and the first thing I did was I sent these guys, the team, to your TV. I sent the host to them, and I was having this discussion with him, Madhusha, being like, "Hey, I want to talk about this." And the first thing he said, knowing how AI savvy you are, he's like, "Oh, you probably got AI to write it." So I want to ask you,
No, I know, no. So you write it or he wrote. So here's a good way to use it. I wrote it. Actually, this is what I did. I said, here is something I want to write. What is an effective way to write a blog post where the point I'm trying to get across is sort of witty and blah, blah, blah. And so Claude gave me, well, one, you could write it as an essay. Two, you could write it as a story. And I said, well, what do you, I think it's that it sets a certain English phrase. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you can start it off as placing the reader inside like first person review. And I said, that's a cool way. So then I started writing a first person review. And what I did was paragraph by paragraph, and I wrote it. I sent it to Claude, and I said, not paragraph, paragraph. I sent a paragraph that I wrote to Claude, and I said, is this what you mean by first person? So I augmented myself a lot by basically having someone that understands English really well and writing a good blog post, or at least I think I wrote it well, where I said, is this what I mean? So I'm writing another one right now, and I'm doing the exact same thing where I said, what is the best structure to structure this spot? And in this one, it recommends writing it in more than essay form. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I remember from English, I was really good at writing essays. So I'm like, okay, so here are 10 points that I have. What's the structure? What point should be the most impactful? Because I think it should be this point. And Claude says, well, this point could be the weakest argument. Maybe if this is the strongest argument. So it gives me time to think about it. I'm not taking what Claude's saying at face value. I'm taking more of a, Claude is saying, this is my point that should be the weakest, but I don't think so. So I'm going to write this as an essay format, but I'm going to write it with how I think was the strongest argument rather than what Claude thinks.
Totally. Yeah. So you're practically doing what you're preaching.
Yeah, I'm asking like an English teacher. I'm like going back and forth, and I'm like, is this the right way to do it? Well, I don't understand. Why wouldn't this be the strongest argument?
Can we call that a layout in the sense of like a sample solution towards the problem that we discussed before? It's you're augmenting it. So yeah, augmenting, I think that's the solution with it, right? I can go on and then have AI do 90% of the work for me, yes, it would be functional, but am I, as a student or something, jeopardizing my entire future just because I'm a little bit more lazier and do not understand the idea behind maybe working with it than making it work for me?
Yeah.
So I think that in my head is like, okay, now early on, I was obviously dumb enough to be like, oh, dude, this is cool, man. Let it fight through this. Absolutely. But now I think I'm adopting the more hybrid model where I'm trying to allow it to teach me things and then me allow it to like work it to me whenever possible. I'm not that crazy of a developer. Like I'm really not that great at coding. Didn't really enjoy it much. But with AI, I think it helps me because what I'm more curious about is system architecture. I understand how the workings of an idea works. Yeah. So what I can do with AI is that it can be my coding assistant, it can be my dev team, but with me having a little bit more knowledge of how the workflow works, I can still function more efficiently. Absolutely. And I think that's what you as an instructor have taught before in a couple of classes and a couple of course of places.
You know, I actually don't think I'm good at Python. I'm much better at like Go and JavaScript. However, I use Python a lot these days. But what's interesting is I can ultimately it's just a syntax and I understand the concepts of Python and how it works, interpret it, PyC or whatever, compile it. But when I'm talking to it, when I'm talking to Claude about it, I'm saying something like, okay, so in to understand, okay, well, in JavaScript, I would have in Golang, I would have a struct. What is the analogous in Python? Well, it would say something, and they're like, okay, great. So I want to structure this architecture where I have like 3 classes, and I'm doing blah blah blah. And so, what's neat about that is I am able to transfer learn something much faster. But now that I'm getting really deep into PyTorch, I'm learning Python at a deeper level so that I don't get lost with this transfer learning. I'm actually learning Python deeper. So you can pick and choose. If I'm just building an app very quickly for somebody that needs to be in Python, I can just quickly transfer learn and bring my concepts from Golang and apply it there. But if I'm trying to understand it deeper, then I can actually take time to learn it and go back and forth with language model and say, well, why does Python do this? Why doesn't it just, why can't I do reflection in this way or et cetera, and you get a better understanding about that language.
Just to refresh my memory, Go and Angular are the same different.
No, Go is
I don't remember.
systems language. Go is like a better version of C or C++.
Okay.
Go is in the same class of like Rust or these system languages you run in the back end.
So not that great.
Yeah. Well, they're good. They all serve its purpose. And it's important to try it. Yeah, they're important to try it and understand the concept. Whether or not you're good at it, that's just up to you practice it.
Yeah. Practice. And that's you gotta make it something. But where did you study your high school or like university education?
I went to McMaster,
Okay.
and then I dropped out second year. I went to McMaster when Android launched. I launched a business on Android in a social app marketplace. And then I got some VC funding, small dollar. So I said, okay, I want to take a break. Second year, go work downtown. And then since then, I've never actually got back to school. I said, it's funny, I've never gone back to school, but I think for some strange reason, I've probably learned more math, science, physics over the course of like 10 years just by through YouTube and random courses I've taken, random clients I work with that needed me for some specialized, that needed me to learn about something specialized in physics, et cetera, to implement an algorithm than I did in school.
The learning project process would have been far more easier or different now with the technologies that we have had today.
Yeah.
Well, my question more so is just that most of the curriculums that we see in universities today, or that's from my understanding, is that it's the same that we've seen like 10 years ago or 5 years ago. There hasn't been so much of a shift. but there's been a drastic shift in tech. So what's your advice and just some learning tips that I should implement on myself or any other students that are out there should implement themselves in a side learning project? And obviously, we're not asking anyone to drop out. Don't drop out. Don't drop out. Finish your education.
No, no, I got lucky. It was a lottery ticket gamble that I did. The whether or not the curriculum moves fast or not, I don't know anymore. But the weirdest thing that a lot of people do not get, a lot of students do not get, is university is so 180 from high school. In high school, the teacher is teaching you and is basically ensuring, for the most part, you learn it and understand it. It's handled. In university, you're on your own. And I don't mean the fact that you know have friends or whatever. It's more so that you're just like a singular person. The professor's not going to sit down with you in a class of 400 undergrads and sell you, do you understand this? If not, come talk to me. So you're on your own and you can do a lot of self-learning. If you don't build those self-learning habits quickly, and now with language models, you could learn it so much faster, then you're going to have a bad time. And university is just going to be like one bad moment after the other, because if you're expecting the professor to come to you, if you're expecting going to a test and being like, oh, the professor covered all this material. No. The professor's job, I think, is the right job, is to guide you into exploring a certain topic, touching on the high points and saying, read the book, do all the questions, you'll do good. If you can't figure out the question, go to the library, learn it. Now you should still go to the library for some things, but now you can ask the language model and you can say, explain to me how the thing that I remember, one of the last things I did in university was infinite sums and all that stuff, eh? So explain to me how this works. It's explain to me how L'Hopital's rule work and all this stuff, right? Like, okay, Grace, I wish I had this now, because I could have done so much better. Not that I did bad. I was like an 80% student, but I would have probably done so much better if I could sit and just go back and forth and really understand the concepts. And that is the key in anything in life, in my opinion. You understand the concepts, you're golden.
Yeah, that's kind of like the most basic advice that every brown parent gives.
Yeah. Well,
A little bit. The means of giving it is different. The different force, but
and
it's the different sound advice.
It sound advice, a tried and true advice. It's worked for me. It's worked for a million people. The difference, I think, with a brown parent is that they expect a level of perfection where you're just like, easy, right? It's not. You need to like work hard, super hard.
Like, having been pioneer in the AI community, we see that there's been so many changes in the last 2 years, certainly.
Yeah.
What is that one moment then like the mind blown moment, or like something, or like I'll call it a prediction buster, right? Something that you predicted that might happen with the AI when you were first involved in it, and something that now you think is like the mind blown moment where, like, I never expected this to happen.
I actually did not expect at all that when I was working with NLP at a deeper level in 2015, 16, or 2016, 17, 18, I did not think that we could get to ChatGPT level that quick, because what I thought would happen was, and I kind of correctly guessed, there would be a whole new type of system that would need to be built. But I could not, I think it's fascinating that we have been able to simply take a whole bunch of language and be able to have created a system that not only is coherent, but is also reasoning, whether or not it doesn't reason like the human, but it is at the end of the day functionally reasoning and behaving with its own little quirks and personality and stuff. I could not understand how we would have gone there because I remember watching the movie Her and going, how would I build her if I wanted to? Because my worldview was so much based on the word to Vec and Spacey and like building NLP based on sentences coming in and figuring out how the sentences work. Where then when like Transformer came out, I remember Transformer paper was coming out, had come out recently at that point, and I still didn't really understand how that's going to work. It seemed cool with theory, but what's mind-boggling to me is we were able to take all this language and only language, not other sensory input, not like um, video feeds or smell and like texture and stuff
Or EQ.
or anything exactly, and suddenly you have something that is able to understand it. Without ChatGPT or language models know something about a leaf so much more intimately than most people do, despite us having five senses. And all ChatGPT has is language. And so that blew my mind. And then when um, when we started writing code with AI models, and the first Copilot version came out, which is just autocomplete on drugs, where it was just like, wow, I wrote the whole function for me. I I was like, you know what? I think we're still like 5, 10 years away before we can have a system that writes code on its own. But we were just like a year away. So I'm blown away at the pace. I think that the pace will continue? I don't think so, but I've been wrong 2 times now, so maybe. But my intuition tells me that the pace can't continue because we're getting close to this plateau moment of we're leveraging these language models technically to the most max. We need a different type of architecture, and Jan LeCun always talks about this. I've heard him say this so many times. I've looked into this a lot, where we are getting to a point where language models are, we've given them so much data, and we can give them more data, synthetic, whatever, but they're not going to suddenly go from behaving how they are right now. Right now, Claude Code likes good code.
Yeah.
Right? Based on what I tell it. Tomorrow, Claude 5 will come out. I don't think Claude 5 will write any more better code in Claude 4. It will be able to understand what I want better. I think the true
The net innovation will start.
yeah, I think the true level up will be multi-agents, and the agents are able to go on for 20 minutes talking to each other and like, sending data across. That's going to be the next breakthrough. That's still transformer architecture. So I still think we still need a whole different type of architecture if we want to get to AGI and stuff. But I'm not qualified. I'm not a deep scientist researcher, deep learning researcher to be able to comment on the type of architecture. But just from working in the field and having a intuitive understanding of what's happening, I think that's what we'll wind up at.
All right. From the vantage point that you are in the industry and with like everything to do with AI, what is that key piece of advice that you would give to someone at my position or anyone that is just like starting out or even stuck where you're just undecisive of like how to navigate or path to like get to a point?
I think the same challenges you have today are the same challenges we all had before. Yes, the challenges are worse because it's not so much AI, but there's a lot of people that are able to produce a lot of output that you feel like, man, like, how am I going to get hired when like this guy's able to vibe code his way to a job, right? That is, before that was there too. It's just a lot more, you weren't vibe coding, someone was just hacking away. But what I would say is really pick a lane and you can iterate on that lane very fast. Like what we were talking about, where you can become an expert, not really, but you can become knowledgeable in the field. Attempt that and be able to go, you know what, I'm really passionate about cybersecurity. Let me get ChatGPT to break down a career ladder for cybersecurity, and let me choose the first step of that ladder and dive very deep into that subject. So when I do talk to a potential employer, I'm not saying I'm very passionate about cybersecurity. I'm saying I understand A, B, and C of cybersecurity better than most people. I have, prototyped a couple of things I want to work. So there you stand out against a whole bunch of other people because they won't be doing that. They're looking at it in a holistic view. You're looking at it as step one because the employer really cares if you understand step one. It'd be great if you understand all 10 steps, but you can't get to step two without experience. So you really need to understand step one.
Yeah, no, great advice. One last advice from a founder perspective. Well, we're in Waterloo. I think there's a drastic shift happening from like workers to like founders. We want builders rather than workers. From a founder point of view, what like one advice to the founders, young founders particularly, with leveraging AI tools today?
There is a very allure to building low-hanging fruits that is uh, that might raise some VC capital very quickly, and you might even get some revenue very quickly. But think about business 101 and try to build a sustainable business, one that is can be free of hype, and try to focus your efforts. You are young. Try to focus your efforts on moonshots. Try to focus your efforts on ambitious projects that are using AI that you can not raise a lot of money, but you're able to execute on. And just like network a whole bunch outside of AI so you can build that peer group around you to attempt these new shots.
That's great. Hey, Rizal, thank you for coming in. This has been a really valuable conversation, memorable one. To everyone listening, if you guys want to hear more conversations like this, follow and join our community, TOTV, Think Outside the Valley, and subscribe our channels. Thank you, Fist.
Thank you, Robin.